There is a challenge that is coming from digital currencies such as blockchain technologies.
So I think it's important to share that anything can be tokenized.
All the money.
I like the idea of a gold standard. I mean, it could be used in a very cryptocurrency way.
Very much sooner than a lot of people understand or think. We will be all at a level playing field.
Hey, Jimmy, how's it going?
It's going good, Molly. Good to see you.
You as well. I'm excited to talk about a very different topic than we usually discuss.
Yeah, coming into my world, talking a little M&A.
I know. Well, one of the things that we often talk about is sort of how the new money system is really going to lead to this massive generational wealth shift as the older generations kind of have stocks and bonds and investments or whatever, and they're going to be transfer those to the next, the millennials generally.
Mm-hmm.
But there's this one thing we haven't talked about, which is all of these business owners who have worked in their businesses. They're the owner typically for decades, and they also need to have a plan on how to transfer that asset, essentially the value of that business, to the next generation. What are your thoughts on how someone who's a business owner should be thinking about this decision?
Yeah. Well, you're right. We're going through this, the generations are moving through time, and we've got these dynamics in play where you've got the baby boom is starting to drift off into retirement, and they're handing that down. In some cases, the succession plan is to hand that down to maybe their millennial children who are also coming of age to where they can be in management. They can have, executive roles in companies, but that's not the case for everybody. So I think in addition to just kind of the different assets that the generations will be kind of used to dealing with and customary, is they're going to have a plan to, if not I don't have children, adult children who can basically step in and take over. What is the exit out of this business? Is this a business that I can take public? Is this a business that I need to enter into the sell side M&A market and that type of thing? In all cases, these people are coming to a position in their lives where they need to carefully plan and prepare for the exit of their business. And there's a variety of different ways to do it, but pretty much every way, if you don't do it strategically and thoughtfully and with a really good team, you can really mess it up and leave a lot of value on the table. So that's really what, is critical for them to be thinking about at this time.
And when you are a lawyer, is this something that you spent time advising your clients about?
I mean, absolutely. That was one of the things about being, a corporate lawyer in big law like I was that, our clients were the very biggest corporations and institutions on the planet who could afford to pay, the billing rates of these very high dollar lawyers to take them through all these processes on the front end. Unfortunately, most entrepreneurs and family-run businesses haven't had access to that caliber of talent and don't want to pay the billing rates, right? It's just too expensive to invest in that type of thing. So it's really one of the things I'm excited about this particular offering that we've been kicking around is that, I get to give back a little bit and come in and help people go through things that I was doing for over 20 years, but help them do it in a way to really maximize the value of their exit, whatever that's going to be, which can be not only life-changing for them, but it could affect many generations of their family.
And if someone doesn't sort of have the support that you provide, or another law like the corporate world gets this support, what are the kinds of mistakes that generally an inexperienced business owner who's not ever sold or done an exit before would make?
Yeah. Well, where to begin? It all starts with, in a lot of cases, there are companies that have been run for 30 to 50 years as kind of family businesses, and they're what we call lifestyle businesses. And what that means is it supported the lifestyle of the entrepreneur, the business owner. It's for the lifestyle of their family, but it's not structured to be a cash flowing business standalone by itself. The way those two businesses are viewed, it's potentially millions and millions of dollars of value just having, an appearance of one looking like a lifestyle business versus one that another owner could own, and think private equity, another ownership group, whatever, could own and cash flow, decades into the future. So that's a mistake right there. You want to step back and do what we call kind of a sell side due diligence process or an internal audit. This needs to be like the first thing you need to do. And you need to have your team, it needs to review the material contracts, see if there's any issues in there that can be cleaned up now before you go into market. Your financial statements need to be reviewed by the deal team to see, is there things that you've been doing, like payments of compensation, payments on certain types of categories of things that were travel, research and development, kind of things that there was money that was going to support the family's lifestyle that can be basically added back into the EBITDA of the business and therefore receive more value in the business. Several things like this, if you approach it methodically and on the front end and get your ducks in a row, you're going to experience way higher multiple, way bigger valuation for the business, and be able to have a more successful exit than if you just kind of try to wing it and go at it alone. The other thing is that there's going to be all sorts of deal terms, all sorts of market things that can occur that, because this isn't what you do as a business owner day in and day out, you're just oblivious to it. You can be taken advantage of. One of the big changes in our market over the past, call it 8 years, has been the advent of what's called rep and warranty insurance. So a lot of people go into these transactions and they end up indemnifying the buyer for what's called breaches of representations and warranties. For example, I don't have any litigation, right? That's typically, make a representation as a seller to me, the buyer, that you don't have any litigation or threatened litigation. You end up closing the transaction, and then it turns out that there was a threatened claim that bubbles up. You had forgotten about it, somebody missed it, whatever. It ends up causing $3 million of damages. And the next thing you know, the buyer is looking to you as if you're the insurance company to reach back in your pocket, pull out the proceeds from the deal, and give it back to them. It's a horrible situation to be in for a seller, certainly a family-run business type of a seller, right? You want to take those proceeds and fund trusts or, go to the beach, do whatever you're going to do in the next chapter of your life, and not have to worry about someone showing up potentially up to 2-3 years later and making an indemnity claim. Well, now they have insurance products for that. And the market has evolved such that buyers have been paying the premiums for those insurance policies in most cases. It can become a negotiation around the purchase price for a couple $100,000 or something like that. You can have this rep and warranty insurance in place, and then neither side has to worry after the fact about either the buyer staying creditworthy, the seller staying creditworthy enough that they can fund this indemnity in the future or whatever. If something happens and there was a breach of a representation warranty that arises in the future, you can look to the insurance product and basically say, okay, there you go. And you don't have to worry about it.
And I'd imagine that most entrepreneurs and business owners that aren't owners of very, very large corporations wouldn't even have any idea that that is a thing.
You wouldn't have any idea. And another big one is the way buyers, certainly if they're more sophisticated, they'll try to play around with the purchase price, and they'll end up trying to defer. So they may give you the valuation you want, but they're only going to pay you, say, 40% of that value in cash at the closing. And they want to defer it somehow, either through what's called an earnout, which basically is just your business financing the purchase price for the buyer going forward. But, basically it has to perform at a certain type of level, and then you'll get some incremental, proceeds or something like that, or through just a financing. And they'll say, such and such conditions have to be in place for us to actually pay you the money in year 2, year 3, year 4. And effectively, they're just financing it. You're financing it for them and they won't, in a lot of cases, even want to pay an interest rate. So there's things like this that sophisticated buyers do to unsophisticated sellers of substantial businesses, and they're basically throwing baseballs right by them. And if you don't know, you don't know.
And how could it, let's say a business owner is watching this, how could they determine or figure out if their business is sellable?
Well, I think pretty much any business is sellable. Probably biggest issue, number one, is this kind of lifestyle versus an ongoing business situation, right? So if your business is the type that you could be removed from the business tomorrow and it would still be functioning and cash flowing at the same level, that's a sellable business, right? That's a business that someone could go and put money into, and they can figure out the financial metrics of it and pay a premium for it and know that that's going to return value to them over time, whether the owner is involved or not. If the business is such that at its current state, you're absolutely required, if you were hit by a bus, there would be no more business. That's a lifestyle business and much harder to sell. Not that it's not sellable. It's just you need to be, looking at it from the buyer perspective and starting to put in things before you take it to market to make it more standalone.
Got it. Now, I did use the sort of verbiage of selling the business, but if an owner wanted to exit their business, are there other options in simply selling it?
There are. Well, you could enter into some type of a partnership with another business. So you may have a key competitor, or you may have someone, if you're a technology business, there may be another technology business that's synergistic, and you may want to form a partnership with that business and do some type of a joint venture and have an exit that way, a monetization event that way. Of course, you can, if the business is substantial enough, you can always exit into the public marketplace. So you can register a portion of the securities that make up the business and have, initial public offering. And there's even other more, streamlined ways to do that through reverse mergers and stuff with existing, public companies that are just dormant public companies but have a listing. So yeah, there's a variety of different ways to exit that don't just mean entering into the sell side M&A market.
And how are we at Valhil Advisors going to help businesses sort of prepare for this transition?
Well, the first thing is we need to just wrap our arms around what the business is, what the client's goals are going to be, because everybody's goals are going to be different. How do they want to look on the other side of the business? And then we can start to basically help them assemble a team of professionals, an attorney if necessary, an accounting firm if necessary, whatever is going to be necessary, we can basically help them secure now and start to go through this kind of sell side diligence process where we start to clean up the business, put the spit, shine, and polish on it. The metaphor I use a lot is you wouldn't consider selling your car without washing it and giving it a detail and making it look as good as it can look before you got people coming over to figure out if they're going to, buy it or not. Same type of concept needs to happen in a business, right? We can also help evaluate, is it the right time to go to market? Time is critical. If everyone in your particular industry is selling and it's more of a buyer's market, that may not be the best time. It could be, though, in a lot of cases, there's nobody for sale in your market. And that's kind of a great time to try to enter the market. We can help you decide as a corporate, more strategic buyer, the right acquirer of your company, or is it a private equity firm? And we have relationships with both, and we can help match you up with the right party. But all of this really kind of ties down to we can make you, or we can assist you in making your buyer absolutely love you, which a buyer loves coming in and having no problems. When they hit problems or hit friction, that's when their antenna goes up and they're like, is there something here I should be aware of? If they ask you for a certain type of disclosure about your top 10 clients, and you don't have that in a spit shine polished, document ready to go with exactly the story you want to tell, you're leaving value on the table. If they put an LOI in front of you with certain terms, kind of like these issues we were talking about before, and they're throwing indemnities by you, they're throwing a structured purchase price by you, and you're not seeing it, they're going to just feel like the entire time they can take advantage of you, and they'll end up buying it for a song. You may end up losing money by entering into the sell side market.
So it sounds like a smart business owner who wants to sell would begin this process of preparing well in advance. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I mean, depending on what the exit is, right? So if you're going to take the company public, for example, you're going to have 3 years of audited financial statements in order to take the company public. If you've never had your financial statements audited, you need to start a process probably 6 months ahead of going public, where you at least take the last 2 years, get them audited, start getting this year audited, such that when it's time to roadshow and do the IPO, you've got 3 years of audited financials. It's just kind of a basic thing. Enter the sell side M&A market. I think timing is going to drive it in most cases, but I would start no later than 45 days prior to entering in the market and go through this kind of sales side process. There's going to be a lot of work to do if you're just kind of assembling the team, but it can be done, and I certainly, the worst thing a seller could do is just wake up one day, think I'm going to sell the business, and basically start contacting potential buyers because they have relationships with strategics in their own industry, because these people deal with each other all the time. Typically, you're supplying some very natural buyers can be clients or suppliers of the business, right? Who's just vertically integrating their business. And these people have an existing relationship. They know you pretty well. They're on the phone with you talking about business and different things. So, the worst thing you can do is kind of just get the wild idea one day. Okay, well, I'm 66. It's time for me to exit, and I'll call up Bob over at whatever company, and they'll be like, we would be delighted to acquire your business. And the next thing you know, you're basically giving it to them.
So you mentioned that we are offering a new service to clients who are interested in potentially learning the process of exiting their business. How does that work? What could someone expect to kind of learn from working with you and speaking with you in this process?
Yeah. Well, I think what they can expect is that they'll learn the right way versus the wrong way. Okay. So we'll have some information requests initially, where they will give us some information about the business, and then we're going to have a 90-minute conversation on the front end to decide if we're a fit, if it's the type of thing that we can really help them out, or we can provide them with a checklist of things that they can go and start doing this on their own. So they can expect that if they end up going through our process, that they're going to have a very clear idea about the way to absolutely maximize value for whenever they decide to start the process. Some people, they may be 2 years away, they may be 3 years away from doing it, and they just kind of want to get some ideas so they can start thinking ahead, start kind of putting the ducks in a row, start thinking about who a team would be, and that type of thing. And we can absolutely help them do that.
And have you heard of businesses sort of not preparing this correctly and having consequences when it comes to sell? Like, what are some of those consequences?
Not only have I heard, I've seen it 1,000 times, right? And typically the way we end up seeing it is they've got an offer, they've got a live offer, and they present it to us, and you're like, well, you start asking them some basic questions like, don't have that, right? And every one of those, like, okay, take that much value off, take that much value off, take that much value off, and that type of thing. So All these things translate into purchase price is the best way that someone should think about it. And if you absolutely want to maximize the value for yourself and for your legacy, for your children, your grandchildren, in some cases great grandchildren can be sent to college on these business decisions that the business owner is making today, it is critical that you take this seriously, that you do some work on the front end, and you don't just kind of wing it because someone called you up one day and offered to buy your business, right? So that's what we can help with.
And that sounds like it could be very costly to try to pursue this path on your own, not having the legal experience that you have, because it's just too many mistakes you could make.
Yeah, it's darn near impossible. And there's so many, moving parts, to go through this process without your attorney and your accountant at a basic minimum, you won't be able to do it, right? Then, most people end up, this is where the disparity is in our market that we talked about on the front end of this. You may end up going to the guy who's like, or the girl who's done all your contracts or whatever, but they've never actually done a M&A transaction, right? So all these issues that we're talking about, they're oblivious to, but they're cheap. That's why you've been using them, right? So the next thing you know, they're sitting there negotiating on your behalf some deal, and all these points we're talking about are flying by them, and they just don't even know. I mean, this has happened recently, where somebody came in with a term sheet, and there's not only indemnities, there's holdbacks to collateralize the indemnity. So now they're actually taking money out of the purchase price and not paying you, and they're setting it aside in an escrow just in case some indemnity comes up in the future. Well, that's completely inappropriate, right? But the attorneys involved, the sell side attorneys involved don't know anything about that, right? They're just missing it. So, issues like that are happening all the time.
And for someone who has spent decades building a business, putting their blood, sweat, and tears into this, to kind of miss out on substantial amounts of value because of these mistakes seems like a very sad thing to happen to some people.
Could be sad. Yeah.
And avoidable.
But yeah. My clients typically don't have those issues, but yeah, it can be very, very sad. The other thing is that, going through the sale of a business like this that you've run for decades, it can be an emotional roller coaster. And because you're not familiar with the ebbs and flows of kind of the transaction schedule and the way things move, it can be a very difficult emotional and mental time for the business owner, because they're not, they're used to focusing on their business that they have control of. They know their vendors, they know their customers, they have great relationships with these people. Everything works very well. It's like a finely oiled machine, right? And then they're put in this new process where, there's the emotion of a lot of money being involved and things like that have you, going from day to day. Are we in? Are we out? We selling? We not selling? Type of thing. And just having, a reasoned voice with a lot of experience to be a counselor through that process can be very, very valuable. We talk about this on the front end, certainly for some of the clients that we have that don't go through this type of stuff every day. We have clients who M&A is their business, right? And they're very sophisticated. This is what they do all the time. And so they're not affected by any of this, right? But then we've got people that they've actually never been through it, right? And we prepare them right up front. This is going to be an emotional draining process, right? And it's going to have ebbs and flows. You're going to feel like you're getting whipped around, and then you're going home and you're talking to your spouse about it. Your spouse doesn't know. And they're like, well, this isn't going to happen or whatever, right? So we prepare them from the get-go to know that this stuff is coming. And that way, when it starts to happen, the ebbs and flows about deal terms and everything, you can very can get very twisted up and tight with these terms as they come. Certain things are deal killers, certain things aren't, and knowing like when to know which one is and which one isn't can be, quite draining. So, yeah, just that kind of moral support is extremely valuable, and you want to have somebody that's trusted. You can, really, I mean, you can go have a beer and talk about this stuff, that type of a thing, and isn't going to just kind of be like, oh, I've got 7 other clients to deal with, and whatever. Good luck to you.
Anyone who's been through any kind of sales or negotiating training knows that when you're emotionally involved in that deal, it's very difficult for you to have leverage, right? Because you care too much and you're going to take things personally. So when it comes to selling the business, which is far more significant than just an individual, transaction in the business, that this must be so stressful that having a third party like you to negotiate that would probably have a substantial impact on the value that they would get out of that deal.
It typically does. I mean, I've had issues in 15-minute conversations that have swung value hundreds of millions of dollars, right, in 15 minutes. And it's just something that just because we've been through this 1,000 times and we know this process so well, and we also have a really good sense for the internal leverage in a transaction. We have a good sense for, does the buyer really need that, or are they just trying to get it, right? Those types of things, which when you're emotionally invested because it's your business, you kind of don't sense it the same way. A lot of sellers get into the situation where they hear purchase price and that number, they become fixated on that number, and that's it. Right. But so then there's all these clawbacks of value happening, but they can't get off the number. Right. And they end up doing what's really a bad deal. And then on the other side, they're like, oh, I wish I wouldn't have done that deal. It was horrible for me. Right. Well, it's because you were counting your money and thinking about your time on the beach and not really pursuing it objectively. So it hits in a bunch of different ways. You got to have a strategic advisor, strategic counselor in this process to make sure that you're hearing things and seeing things objectively. And you got a sounding board, when you wake up in the middle of the night and there's something that's like, not feeling right, or you're concerned about it, you have someone to get on the phone, like, am I crazy? I mean, it's like, oh, this happens in every deal, or no, you're not crazy. We need to go to the mattresses on that particular issue that it's keeping you awake,
Let's talk for a second about the process that we've set up to support clients through this new offer. Because we are a small operation and can't really help every type of business, we've set up a form. It's kind of like an application where you provide Jimmy with all this background on details about the business and whatnot. And then once that is completed, I'm actually going to talk to people to make sure it's a good fit. And then we'll book a time on your calendar. And then Jimmy, after someone kind of has this session with you and the time comes, let's say it's 6 months later to sell it, do you also want to help support them through that part of the process as well?
Yeah. As you said, I mean, not everybody will be a good fit for the Valhil Advisors, but to the extent that we have a good relationship, good rapport, and it's the type of business that we feel like we can really help, absolutely. It doesn't really matter if it's 6 months, a year, 2 years from now. We want to basically undertake the engagement with you, and I think that'll be very clear to both parties at the end of kind of the initial chat that we end up having.
Now, we live in this era of the internet, which is awesome, but it means there can be an overwhelming amount of information. So I imagine that a business owner could Google all the things that they need to prepare. What would you say to somebody who's kind of not sure if they should try to figure this out on their own or fill out the application to work with us?
It's just the risk reward type of thing. Most of the businesses who we would want to work with, it's a team sport. Business is a team sport, and engaging in a material transaction like this is the same. So if you want to, put the value of your business and your legacy on a checklist that you pull off of Google and wing it, I mean, more power to you. But you wouldn't be the type of person to be interested in working with us anyway. So I don't know what to remark about that. Then if this is important enough to you that this is a generational wealth creation event in your life, don't have to hire us. You need some help, and you need a team. Do not pull the Google checklist and go down it thinking, you're just going to go wing through, this material event, because you're going to leave substantial amount of value on the table.
Thank you. Anybody who's interested in pursuing this, put the link in the description so that you can fill out the application. And if we think it's a good fit, we will be in touch with what the next steps are.
Thank you, Molly.
All right.